welcome everyone to the Level Up Your Legacy podcast. I got a question for you. What standard do you hold yourself to? What is your own personal measure of success? I love these questions, and I'm excited to dive in today to today's topic. We're going to talk about maintain your own scorecard. And as we get ready to dive in today, I want to encourage you to join our discussion by commenting below in the video, asking us a question, or maybe even just leaving us some feedback. We'd love to connect with you and hear how this podcast is impacting your life. So today we're talking about scorecards. We're talking about defining success for ourselves. And I thought there's no better expert on scorecards than the one I live with, my son. He's 11 years old. He is the foremost expert on anything that can be scored or has a score or anything that he can score more on. There's nothing that he does without a scorecard. Recently, we played mini golf. We had to keep score. We go bowling, definitely have to keep score. We play catch in the backyard. You'd think that doesn't have a scorecard, but we do. We catch how many we can, and we go for records all the time. Everything has to have a scorecard with him. Just to paint you a picture, he has these replica helmets of all 32 NFL teams, Bill. And this is sick. And
dude, I used to have all the pencils when I was in grade school many years ago.
I think it's what they've evolved into.
I'm so old. They used to have pencil dispensers at the elementary school, and that was the thing. You just kept throwing in. I forget what it was, maybe dimes or quarters at the time, till you had all 32 pencils, and that was the goal.
See, I'm glad that era is over, because I couldn't keep giving him quarter after quarter. We'd have every pencil in that whole machine, because he would have to make sure he has all 32 teams. So he has these little replica helmets, and each week he goes through the entire record of who's playing. He just started this, and he puts the helmets next to each other, head to head. And then he has a little sheet underneath it where he estimates the score, where he's listed the 3 top players to watch during the game.
That's
like
incredible.
He takes this to another level. He is a score obsessor. And maybe you've got some of
he's going to be an analytics guy, I think.
I wouldn't doubt it, honestly. He's got that brain where he just wants to know all the time, who's winning, what are their percentages, how are they improving their game? What's the percentage that they're going to be in the Super Bowl? Like, these things I've never thought about. My mind does not work like that, but that's who he is. That's his score obsession. And maybe you are a score obsessor too, maybe to a lesser extent. I hope to a lesser extent. I'm wondering constantly how you're doing. How do you measure up? How successful are you truly? Those are questions I know I ask myself a lot. So we're going to dive into this week's chapter. It is chapter 24. If you're following along, and Ego is the Enemy. It's called Maintain Your Own Scorecard. And it starts with a really interesting story. It starts with the New England Patriots and a draft pick that they made. Now, it's arguably the greatest draft pick ever taken. And it wasn't the first round draft pick, second round, third round, fourth round, 100th round even. It was the 199th draft pick in the 6th round. And maybe you've already guessed who that is. It's a University of Michigan quarterback. His name is Tom Brady. He's already won 7 Super Bowls. With 10 appearances, he has the record of the most games won by a quarterback, the most games played and started as a quarterback, the most combined passing yards, the most touchdown passes, the most game-winning drives, the most fourth quarter comebacks. And let me remind you, he was picked 199th in the draft. Now, the Patriots were both jazzed and probably fairly saddened by that pick, because not only did they get the golden goose, but it took them 199 picks to get there. But they never stopped learning. They realized that they needed to refine their drafting process, and they were committed to always getting better. And I love that thought, being committed to always getting better. So Bill, let's camp right there today. First question, how do you cultivate a drive continually want to improve in your life?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we all keep score. Let's just start there. And that's not a bad thing. We're kind of created to keep score, really. We all need to know how we're doing in relationship to many things, right?
Mhm.
How you're succeeding in relationships, how you're succeeding at your job, how you're succeeding in your health or not succeeding. We all have some kind of measuring system by which we use to know how we're doing. It's an important thing in life. And so like in that question is like the reason for scorekeeping is so that we continue to get better. So how do we cultivate that drive? I think there's two things. One is making sure you have a really compelling vision for your life. Like vision is a big part of drive and growth and motivation. John Maxwell talks a lot about this in his book, Put Your Dream to the Test, and how many people lack strong motivation because they lack a compelling dream or vision. And one of the
Mhm.
things in coaching that we often start with is to help clients really dial in that vision for their life. Why are you on this earth? And what will it look like when you have fulfilled your purpose? Like, what's that
Mhm.
picture? What's that ideal picture of the future? If you had to describe your life as a scene from a movie in
Yeah.
great detail, when it's really working right, describe it to me.
Mm.
One of the things Ed DeCosta used to do, like with clients, like he would take this imaginary DVD and slide it across the table and say, okay, describe to me the four highlights from your life a year from now, when the things that you want to see happening and that really matter to you are happening. It's just kind of a creative way to help people start to think about, what is it that I want? And what will it look like, feel like, smell like, taste like when I'm experiencing that? And that exercise is really powerful. We do that a lot. We've done that with hundreds, if not thousands, of clients, of helping them develop life plans. And part of that life planning process is describing, taking the most important areas of your life and describing those areas and their ideal futures in great detail. And
Mhm.
doing that helps, because our minds think in pictures, creates this vision of what we could be. And the purpose of that is to create pull power, like to pull me forward, to aspire toward that vision. And the more compelling it is and the more detailed it is, the more I can manifest that, and more I have a target, to pursue. So that would be one
Mhm.
thing, a really and very few people do, in fact, have that, a compelling vision. Secondly, is surrounding yourself with growing people. It's funny, we were having this conversation in one of my classes that just launched a couple of weeks ago, and some of the people, when they were in the first class that they took with me, our kind of an introduction to leadership, our 90-day leadership trek class, they talked about how they were in this great growth environment with other like-minded people, and some people who'd never read before found themselves like reading daily, and they were like growing, and and they were on this really cool path. One of these groups, there was such a great connection with the people who were part of this mastermind together, now continue to meet together every week. And it's
Mm.
been several months since that class ended. And one of the things they talk about in their continued meetings is what they've been reading. And the one guy was like,
Wow.
every week, he said, I've fallen out of that rhythm. And every week I go into this and everybody talks about what they've been reading. And he said, I have to admit, I haven't been reading. I've kind of got out of that rhythm. But it was that weekly reminder that I'm not really growing, and I'm surrounded by all these growing people, that kind of created this motivation and this urge, like, okay, I got to get back into a structured
Mhm.
mastermind environment. So signing up for this course and now getting back, he just said this week, I'm reading again. I'm
Oh
back
my
into
gosh.
my reading rhythm. Why? Well, because he was surrounded by growing people that made him really uncomfortable, because we're created for growth. And when we're not, and we surround ourselves with growing people, it feels very uncomfortable. It's a really healthy
Oh my gosh.
level of accountability. And
Yeah.
that dynamic, I put myself in an environment with people who are ahead of me, with people who are growing, and I'm seeing what's going on in their life. I want that. I want that for myself. So I think those two things are really big factors in increasing that motivation.
I love it. So creating a compelling, I love that you use the word compelling, first of all, a compelling vision for your life, right? So you have something really, really, really big to aim for that keeps you always hungry to grow. And then surrounding yourself with like-minded people who will push and spur you on and also keep you accountable to growth. Those are great things. And I want to stop there to say, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably already interested in growing. You probably want to continue to grow. And that's the tribe that we kind of surround ourselves with. And we're excited that you're here. But let's talk about that for a second. Warren Buffett, who is phenomenally successful, he says that we need to make a distinction between the inner scorecard and the external one, the inner one and the external scorecard. And Ryan Holiday jumped on that idea in this chapter, and he said, your potential, the absolute best that you're capable of, that's the metric to measure yourself against. I want to say it again. Your potential, the absolute best that you are capable of, that's
Mm-hmm.
the metric of success to measure
Right.
yourself against. So, anybody can win, anybody can have a little victory, but are you measured up to your absolute best? So let's camp there for just a second. My second question is, what are some of those benefits and what are some of those potential pitfalls of playing to your own inner scorecard?
Well, I mean, if we're thinking about it from the standpoint of the way you frame the question, I think that's a healthy approach. I'm defining my success and my growth against my own vision and goals for my life. I'm running my
Yeah.
race. I'm not running anybody else's race. And I'm comparing myself against that best version of myself. Um, because, and I think this is the distinction to make here, being goal oriented versus being growth oriented.
Hmm.
A goal orientation has to do with accomplishing things and
I
hitting
hit it. Hit my
benchmarks and
metric. Yeah.
exactly. But a growth mindset has more of this idea of I'm designed to grow, and I'm the most healthy, fulfilled, actualized, engaged when I'm growing. And that's going to be a lifelong pursuit. And if I've got a growth mindset, I'm going to hit goals.
Mm-hmm.
If I've just got a goal orientation detached from a growth mindset, then you can lose motivation over time. Because
Sure.
a lot of times, goal, and this kind of gets back to your question, goals that we have, the motivation for setting those, there can be multiple motivations for those. And a lot of times, when we're hitting certain goals, we're comparing or competing against someone or something else, right?
Mhm.
Which is not always a bad thing. I'm a hugely competitive person, but it's got to be more than that. Because like, okay, once your goals hit, then what? Okay, well,
Yeah.
then another goal. Okay, so you hit that goal, then what? Well, I think the larger question is, what's the purpose of setting goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
where what's the ultimate reason by which you want to accomplish things? So you can accomplish things. Your
Yeah.
goal should always be in service of something greater, and that is the ultimate purpose or vision for your life. And so, like, that's where I think the growth mindset is kind of a better way of thinking about it. My purpose is to fully experience and actualize what I was put on this earth to accomplish. In
And
order
do
to
it the
do that,
best that I possibly can do.
in order to do that, I'm going to continually need to be growing in any number of areas of my life. And the goals fit within that greater emphasis of growing toward that purpose, rather than just being like this detached pursuit of accomplishing more.
Mhm.
Detached from a greater purpose, goals can lose their meaning over time, and they can become, it's like the law of diminishing returns. You know, if your goal is just to make more money, when will that be enough? You know,
Mhm.
well, when I make a little bit more. Okay. Well, when you hit a certain, I've heard many people talk about this, when you hit a certain level of financial success, you start to realize, okay, there's more to life. This isn't really what life is about. It's not about money. Okay, so I've accomplished a certain revenue threshold or goal. Okay, so great. What now? You
Mhm.
know, and I think that all those things do is point to greater realities in life that we're really truly put on this earth for. And so to me, that growth mindset versus a goal mindset is really important, such that your goals, while important, should fit within the larger scope of this growth path that you're on toward becoming, you know, a fuller expansion and expression of who you were meant to be and reaching, as Holiday talks about, your full potential. And that you need to define that for yourself. That's again kind of going back to a real practical tool on how we do that is the life planning process. That's where you kind of define, hey, what are these key success factors in my life? What are those key areas, key accounts? What are those priorities? And then what does success look like in each of those areas? And where am I at now in relationship to where I want to be? And what are the steps that I need to take in order to get there? That's just creating your own growth path, your own success metrics for your life,
Mhm.
which you need to be super clear about so that you can run your race and not worry about running anybody else's. And when you do that, the goals fit within the larger framework of your purpose. But when you don't have that larger compass for your life, then goals can be just this way by which I try to compete, compare, and keep up with the people to my left and the people to my right,
Which is exhausting
which is exhausting, which
and
is a
pointless.
tyranny, which is not fulfilling, which, you know, you're constantly chasing your tail and never really experiencing what you were put on this earth to experience. You know, it's like you're this constant measuring and comparing of yourself to others is the source of so much misery in
Yeah.
our world. You know, it's the opposite of fulfillment. It's a tyranny.
Which is kind of like the tire stem to inflating our ego, right? Because if we're comparing ourselves to our ultimate best, like we're always pushing to achieve for the right reasons. But if we're looking around to our left and right, I'm doing better than that guy. I'm doing better than this guy, or that's my success looks a little shinier than this over here. Your ego is just blowing up the whole
Yeah,
time.
so true. And you know, the really sad part of that is it's this myopic obsession with myself.
Hmm.
When you are pursuing your goals for your life that flow out of why you are put on this earth, and you know that, and you are just focused on that and free in that, um, and you see other people succeed, then you're free to celebrate their success
Yes.
and enter into their joy and bless people and be that person who can genuinely get excited for others when they get a win or they reach a goal or something really good happens to them. It's kind of like what Paul says in Romans. You can weep with those that weep and rejoice with those that rejoice, because I'm not comparing myself to you. We're not in competition. I'm running my race and you're running your race. And the abundance mentality says there's plenty enough out there for you to experience success and for me to as well. And that's so much, that's such a better, happier, free,
Healthier.
more fulfilling, healthier place to be and space to live in.
No,
Think about the idea that how toxic is it that my success is dependent on your failure or your limited success.
that
Like,
feels
wow. I
gross.
mean, yeah, I mean, think about that. Wow, if you really believe that, you know, that's that's just not a good space. That's a really toxic space
Hmm.
to be in for yourself and for others. So just had to say that. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I appreciate that. Okay, so listen to this quote. He says, Ryan Holiday says, a person who judges himself based on his own standards doesn't crave the spotlight the same way that someone who lets applause dictate success. A person who can think long term doesn't pity yourself during short term setbacks. So he's talking about these, little wins and short term setbacks, and all the while, if we take this long view of our life, we're in a much healthier position. So here's my question: how would you coach someone into keeping a long-term perspective in light of either short-term successes or losses?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, coaching. Practically, the tool that is a great tool for that is to really develop that life plan,
Hmm.
which defines, you know, we always talk about legacy, and the kind of life planning process starts with imagining your own funeral. Okay,
Yeah,
that's the ultimate that's the ultimate
that's
long
it.
game.
Start with the end
You
in
know,
mind. That end
start
is
with the
coming
end
for
in
all of
mind.
us.
Exactly. That's the Covey principle and the 7 habits. Begin with the end in mind. That's the long view. That's the ultimate reality. That's the ultimate long view. What does the end of my life look like? And while none of us know that exactly, I think it's a really important exercise to imagine it. What would you hope the end of your life would look like? How do you hope to be remembered? And getting super clear on that helps you then get clarity on your purpose. It helps you get clarity on your core values and in your key priorities in life. And then from there, to create a plan, a practical plan on how you move from where you are to that end that you hope to arrive at. And that's applying real architecture to your
Yeah.
own life. I had somebody yesterday talking about how he is really good at advanced, strategic planning for a lot of different areas in business, but he's never really thought about applying that to his own life.
Hmm.
And I said, you've already got the skills. You're good at this. Now all you have to do is apply it to your own life personally. That to me is the long, that's the long view. And I think also, and this kind of goes back to, we've been talking a lot more about faith. I'm a Christ follower. I'm a person of faith. And to me, ultimate reality is centered around who's the person whose image I've been created in, and that is
Hmm.
God, that is Christ. I really derive my ultimate purpose and meaning in life by being connected to Him and understanding the purpose for which He's created me. And one of the things that we learn in the Bible really gives us that plan, what God desires for our lives. So we don't have to try to figure it out. I can read the instruction book. But one of the things, in terms of, you talked about these things that happen in life, the little
Hmm.
things and the setbacks and the ups and the downs, all those different experiences that are part of life. As a person of faith, one of the things the Bible says, and we know that all things work together for the good of those who love Him and who are called according to His purposes. That's pretty significant for
Oh my
me
gosh.
to find meaning in every circumstance of life. because there's a lot of things that happen in life that don't feel good, that aren't in and of themselves good. We live in a fallen, broken world where things have been massively impacted by sin, from our own brokenness to just what it means to live in a fallen world where there's disease and and hurricanes. We're in the hurricane season, and how just living in a fallen world that doesn't work right impacts our own lives. So there's a lot of things that happen to me, or things that I do myself, not all of which that are good. But when I understand that they're all part of God's overarching purpose for my life, and he's using those things to shape me into a person of character and virtue, to help me become more compassionate and empathetic, to teach me to be more connected to the sufferings of others, to understand the importance of living a life of integrity, all those things, all the experiences of life. I look at that verse and I say, yeah, wow, God has a plan for me, and he's literally using everything, be it good or bad. Sometimes I think it's interesting how we judge experiences in life as to whether they're good or bad. What are we making that judgment on? Because sometimes people who have gone through the most horrific experiences in life, when they're going through them, think it's the worst thing ever. But sometime down the road, they realize, had I not gone through that, I never would have experienced this.
Yeah.
That was the price of admission for me to experience one of the greatest things in life that I ever experienced, And that verse just always helps me. Hey, God's using everything in my life for ultimate good, even if it doesn't feel good in the moment. And to trust that, and to know that it all weaves into and is a part of the overarching plan for my life, I think is really helps me, kind of stay steady and look at these things through a bigger, larger, holistic, long view of life prism.
Well, and that's true, because life has a lot of ups and downs. There are good days, there are bad days. What does John Maxwell say? He says a leader never has 2 good days in a row, right? And it's really easy to get derailed on those not so good days. If you don't have that anchor, that perspective, that, you're going somewhere with your life, you're taking intentional steps to becoming the best version of yourself, and that God is sovereign and has the power to work all things together for good. Man, those 2 thoughts alone, I think, can help us keep our eyes on our own race and fix our eyes on what's ahead for us. And not only find satisfaction in that, but also find the joy in, like you said, being able to cheer for those alongside of us who are running their race as well. So
yeah.
I love it. I love today's discussion.
And Paul, one of the things, here's another one. If you think about life and much of it being hard, I think we have an email going out this week to talk about when we go through challenging stuff in life, when you can find that there's a purpose and all that. Another New Testament verse, James, a wisdom writer in the New Testament, says, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. What in the world? James,
I think that was a misprint.
James, have you been smoking something?
Check the translation on that.
And then James says, for you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. Man, the people in life that you have the most respect for, aren't they the people who have the greatest level of resilience and just stick with itness? And those people are the same ones who've endured some of the most painful, challenging experiences in life, but there's something forged in their character that when you're around them, you're like, oh my gosh, there's a depth to this person that so draws me to them. I need what they have.
Yeah.
And again, it didn't happen apart from those trials, from those challenging things. And that was the gateway to literally accomplishing their purpose in life and part of the process. So
count it all joy.
Count it all joy.
I think that's a great place to stop today. I want to
count it. We're counting. We're measuring.
Oh, look at that, the score.
See, I usually don't get those, Paul. That you usually get those.
If you're keeping score, count it all joy today. That's the score we're keeping. So we want to make today's recording available to our viewers later on. So if you haven't subscribed to our weekly emails, make sure you go to billcoxcoaching.com, click on the free newsletter button, and we'll keep you connected with leadership tips and events and our weekly podcast. We hope you've enjoyed today's discussion. I found it to be a blast. It was very edifying and encouraging. I always love connecting with you, Bill. I love your perspective and your insight. And if you've found joy in today's podcast as well, tag someone in it. Share this video with someone who might find it helpful, and maybe forward this email on to someone else. So until next time, this is Paul McCosco and Bill Cox, and so long for now on the Level Up Your Legacy live stream and podcast.
Hey, thanks again for watching today's video. And before you go, subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure you go to billcoxcoaching.com. Sign up for our regular newsletter to help you move from success to significance and lead your life in such a way that you live a legacy. Have a great day.